Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not for Broadcast, where we are going to be talking about something that I have been messaged several times about, Avery. A lot of people want your opinion on it. And that is, of course, the Kendrick Lamar album that just dropped an hour ago. So, did you give it a listen? What'd you think?
No, I have not.
All right, end of the episode. Thanks for watching, everybody.
You're welcome. I mean, what do you want me to do? It literally came out like an hour ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've already listened to it twice, so you're just
Oh,
you're just
well,
slow.
I mean, you're just a Californian, so you're always up on the latest pop trends and
True.
always in
That's
there
of
first in
course.
the LA scene. You're just constantly in the middle of the buzz. What can I say?
Yeah,
Some
I'm a
people should be
very
working on other
outgoing.
things, but take what you can get.
Hey, speaking of working, who's going to be working next week? That's me going to Blast. I'm going to be leaving Avery behind. For anybody who's wondering what is going on there, by the way, I am filling in for Suns fan. So they hire Suns fan Cinder in, and then Suns fan doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to travel. And so they need a play-by-play. They hire me. So it's not, we are still casting together. We're going to be casting together for an event later on this year. You can guess which one. There's not many left. So don't worry. We're still going to be casting together. You don't have to worry about that. But Suns fan's just busy with his game, I assume. So
We'll see. We'll see what we'll see what pans out. Yeah, we'll
it's
see.
true. Negotiations have yet to happen for 2025, of course. It still needs to happen between the TOs and apparently the casting pairs as well, divvying up the split of the cash. You imagine it was that way if TOs just paid us a sum of money and then we just split it,
That's
Some
basically
duos
how it's
would
been
split it.
working. I'm not going to lie. I keep trying to get a bigger chunk of this split and it doesn't happen. And I'm getting real sick of it. That's all I'm going to say. So we'll see what
I
happens
just
this
think that
next
you're
year.
not worth more than 30%. That's all. I just
Mhm.
think I carry 70%
All
of
right,
the
what do you want to
broadcast,
talk about,
so.
man? Let's just talk about what you
All
have on your
right.
docket instead of useless random shit.
The Parker drama, Avery. I've already recorded an episode with Quinn and Aiden, so I've heard their thoughts on it. But you always have that. You always seem to have a different take on these things.
Uh-huh.
And
What was their take? Sum up their take, so we don't have to all. Everybody watching doesn't have to go watch your dog shit podcast. Just sum up a quick take of what has already been said, so that I don't have to repeat it.
Okay.
One sentence.
They actually found that the most egregious thing. Okay, so quick recap of what has happened with Heroic for those of you guys. Parker is on Heroic. They won a LAN. They went to Dream League. They lost pretty hard. Parker was pretty fed up. He went on stream, flamed Divide Llama. Then they played in the qualifiers for ESL One Bangkok. It went to a game 5. Things did not go right in that game 5. They lost to Beast Coast. Afterwards, Heroic put out a statement that they are separating ways with Parker, and they explicitly said that it was because he did not demonstrate a willingness to win or whatever. They basically said he's toxic. So, and then Parker has since had a rebuttal where he's listed basically his grievances with the team, as well as giving his own interpretation of the events that happen in Game 5. And there you have it. We can probably link some of that stuff below. That's I'm just giving that job out to somebody.
Not at all what I asked for, but that's okay. I was asking, is this? What is Quinn's /Insania summary in one sentence?
So we went over the footage and we looked at Game 5, and they thought that what Parker did inside of the game, his actions inside of the game, was very reasonable. The fact that he went to push out other lanes, that he didn't bots into the team fight that happened. There was an agreement that Chrysalis made a good point of it is a team effort. And so if more people want to do something, if 4 other guys are saying we should fight, you probably should go with that, just because it's better to do things together, even if it is the wrong decision. To do the wrong thing as 5 people is better to do the right thing as 1 person, I guess. But so they had no problems with his actions inside of the game, We don't know what the communications were like inside of the game. Obviously, that could tell a very different story, right? But what Quinn had the biggest problem with, and I think the other two agreed, especially Chrysalis, was the fact that he went on stream and flamed Divine Llama before ESL One Bangkok qualifiers, which I am assuming that put him on kind of a suspension of sorts, where he was like, all right, that's 2 strikes, 1 more, you're out, sort of deal. And I think this game 5 was that, because Quinn felt like it was incredibly bad to go on and shit talk your teammate while you're on the team. He said it's never a good look to do it, anytime, to talk about your teammates and shit talk them. But to do it while you're on the team, he said is pretty insane.
Yeah, well, Quinn's a little piece of shit, so what does he know? I'm not on a team with him anymore, so I can shit talk him, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's the level-headed take.
Mm-hmm. But you never have... I think you have level-headed takes, but I feel like you always have a twist, something a little bit different brought to the discussion.
So I see a couple of things in this that have not been brought up. One,
okay,
the Crystallis' take that it's correct for 5 people to do the wrong thing instead of the one guy to fight for what he thinks is correct. I used to actually believe this as well.
Okay,
and there was I have ingrained in my brain a very specific moment in my team before TI 10, I think, in Romania, where I got in a big argument with Quinn. And my argument with him was that sometimes you just need to accept the L and move on, because he would continually fight for what he thought was right about the way to play the game or what should have happened in a game or scrim or whatever. And I was like, dude, we can't make any overall team progress because everything comes back to like, you think it's right and other people disagree or don't get it. And so it's better if sometimes you just take the L and go with what I think should happen so that we have some unity. Okay. And I've thought about that moment a lot.
So to be clear, it was your 2 different ideas clashing, or Quinn and the rest of the other people?
No, it was just Quinn's a very headstrong individual. It wasn't always him and the rest of the team or something. I'm not ostracizing him, but it was like, a lot of discussions where I felt like we should just come to a conclusion, and he felt like, yeah, maybe A is true or not, but there's B and C that we also need to take into account. And it was like, just go with fucking A, take the L, go with A. Our team is in shambles. We need to get shit going.
Yeah.
Basically, to sum it up, that I felt at the time he should take some small losses for the greater good. That's how I phrased it. And I think it's the same idea, is that sometimes you should, even if you know something's right, you just don't go with it. So you go with the team and you unite on a bad game. At the time, I felt like this was the correct thing to do. And I've thought about this moment a lot, philosophically. Like, was that actually a correct thing for me to say at the time? Would I say it now? Would I still believe in this? And the conclusion I've come to is no. That's the simple conclusion, that I actually was incorrect and that I think it was inherently bad. And the reason I think it is because I think, there are rare situations where it's correct to do. And those are very high pressure situations where you have incredibly limited amount of time to change anything.
Right.
And in Dota, I view that as like you're in the middle of a TI grand final, for example.
Or a game 5 in a final that gets you to a LAN.
Yes. But I would actually not view this as that type of case. I do not think this is demanding enough. And the reason I will say that is because I think the downside of going with the bad idea and uniting is you risk not learning from it, number 1. And 2, you are building a methodology of we shouldn't always be looking for the optimal play.
Okay.
Right? In how many situations is it okay to go with the suboptimal play because everybody's on board versus our team should be better and we should try and be better and always finding the optimal play? And if some guy sees the optimal play, then why don't we have a framework that allows us to also see it in that moment and go with it? Because I think there's a decent argument that the more you train people to look for these things and believe in each other, the more you will find them and the better your team will become at going with them. And you'll slowly weed out the need to continually unite in bad ideas and bad moves and bad play. And instead, you should just take that, fucking learn from it, and improve as a team. And over the course of a year or 2 years or 3 years, you might not like that, but that's how you become a better team in the long term. So I would say sacrificing a qualifier or whatever to become a better team a year from now is worth it. if your overall goals are to win things like TI or Riyadh or whatever and become the best team in the world, that you have to have that mindset. It's a different, the reason I say it's bad is because I think it reflects your mindset of a team. I don't think you can be a team that settles for anything if you want to be the best.
Okay.
And I think that mindset shows in a lot of champions across a lot of different sports and games. They continually strive for perfection. And again, it doesn't mean there aren't individual instances where you put that to the side for other things that are more bearing. But I think ignoring that is a mistake that I made, and I think a mistake other people made. And in this particular instance, you're talking about a very specific case. I don't know about that case. That's like within them, their team, and whatever. But I think there is this mindset in Dota of like it's often better to just go with what the team wants to do. And I've thought about that a lot, and I'm not sure how much I agree with it anymore.
Okay.
That's my take on that.
A couple counterpoints. The idea that there is an optimal play, first of all, right? Isn't there? I feel like Dota is an open enough game that the line can be blurry sometimes, and I think there are multiple optimal plays. Or at bare minimum, people believe that there is an optimal play, and they have a disagreement on what that is.
Yeah. But I just don't think the argument that like 4 people think something is good and one guy thinks one thing is good means that one guy should never be listened to.
Okay.
I think they're completely even in potential.
Okay. Then that's fair enough. And you have to go one direction or the other, I think.
Yes.
And that's in that situation, right? You do have to go one way or the other. Like in order to prove what you're looking for, to prove what was a good idea or a bad idea, what was the optimal play, don't you have to actually experiment with it? Don't you actually have to go and do the thing and see if it ends up with success and failure? And if it's met with success, you can still be critical of it, right? And say that, okay, just because it worked doesn't mean it was right. But like, don't you have to actually kind of see that path through one way or another before you actually...
Yeah, so I'm talking about situations in which a decision was made, the team went with it, and then this is a like post-moment discussion or an evaluation, right? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the situations where the team is debating, you should have just gone with this play because the whole team was going with it. And the other guy saying, no, I shouldn't have because I think what I wanted to do was right. And looking at the situation, I can see that I still think it's right. We're talking about that type of situation.
Yeah.
Which is what this Parker thing relates to. And I think in those situations, the team can't sit there and just be like, this guy's point of view is automatically incorrect because in the moment he should have just gone with the 5-man team.
Okay.
Because the bigger question is, why was the whole team on a suboptimal path to begin with?
Okay.
And that gets swept under the rug. You risk sweeping that under the rug in terms of why were 4 people making an incorrect decision.
I guess the problem I'm struggling with here is like, why is it that the one person having this idea of an optimal play and like not conforming to the majority, why is the other side of the coin any better? Why is it that people are just agreeing, like, because this one guy really feels strongly about something, even though they don't agree with it, right? Why is them conforming to him any better?
It's not. I think they're even in potential.
Okay.
But teams have a tendency in this argument to say, you should have gone with the 4, right? They're skewing the even potential to the 4 and ignoring that this guy could have been right in that moment.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And honestly, it doesn't.
You're
it doesn't really.
The pendulum swings too far into the majority's favor, and
the argument for it is because 5 people doing the wrong thing is better than one guy doing what he thinks is right.
Sure.
That's the argument.
That's the argument in the moment. Yeah.
Yes.
And like when you have to do something.
Yes. And I think that's flawed because then I think it means you had 4 people choosing a suboptimal decision. If the one guy was actually right, he might be wrong as well, but then he was just fucking wrong. That happens all the time. But when the one guy's right and the 4 are wrong, and that repeatedly happens, you have to sit there and evaluate as a team and be like, this guy clearly understands the game better than our team right now. We need to learn from him and improve our decision making or get on the same page in terms of how we align with how he views it, because you don't want to end up in a situation where the team consistently makes the one guy who is correct choose something that he thinks is wrong just to punch together. It will not work out in the end because that guy's going to get really fucking pissed over the long term. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to bring up. Is like, even if you think it's better because you have 5 people all punching together, this guy's going to get incredibly frustrated because you're basically telling him his view of the game is wrong and wrong and wrong over and over and over again.
Okay.
And he should play in a way that he thinks is incorrect or suboptimal just to agree with the team. And I think telling someone to do that is a bad thing to do.
I guess the way I viewed it initially is I'm thinking of like one instance where I think it is correct to say in the moment we should just be unified in whatever our decision is, right? I think that is the correct play. But if that becomes a systemic excuse to always do something,
it is always systemic. This type of thing is never an isolated incident. I will believe that in my heart till the day I die about almost anything competitive. The guy who exists in this type of system where he is the outlier and he's very strong about it. Not some guy who's like, I think we could have done this. Well, but like the guy who's like, this was the right play. We should have done this. I think all 4 of you guys are wrong and I will stand by that till I die. That guy is not only going to do that once. It's going to come up again and again. And it'll be a repeating thing and the team will have to solve it one way or the other.
Okay.
I just like guarantee it 99% of cases. Maybe there's a fucking outlier somewhere, but 99% of cases, that's the case. I guarantee you this is not the first time in game Parker has like said we should do this and the rest of the team's like, no, fuck you, you know?
Sure.
It doesn't work like that. Like that's because the guys who are strong enough to go against the entire team in those moments are the guys who are strong enough to build their own ideas about the game. And generally they think they're correct. This is like their modus operandi, you know? This is how they're going to function in the team and think about Dota. And Dota is a game that, you know, how many strong players have we seen over the decade or so of last competitive decade of Pro Dota where you can just look at that guy and be like, he has his idea about how he wants to play the game and he is not going to bend that. Like he'll bend it like 5%. Sure. You know, I look at guys like 33 who literally just wanted to build his own team after winning the TI, probably in part because his ideas about the game are so strong. Not saying they butted with liquids or whatever, but like you can clearly look at this guy and see he wants to play the game a certain way, right? And he said it. Like he wanted to play with Nightfall because he likes how that guy thinks about the game. He obviously has some idea. And it doesn't matter really what it is, but like that guy, if you put him in a team where he thinks you should do something and the rest of the team thinks you should do something else and that he's wrong, it's going to become a source of conflict because 33 or guys like that are not just suddenly going to be like, oh yeah, you're right. I should just go with what you guys think is wrong. He's going to sit there and defend till his death that the team was wrong. And why the fuck are all of you guys doing this wrong shit? And we need to play this way. And that's why teams eventually disband with really strong headed players because they can't come to an agreement on how to play the game is like the simple version of it.
Okay.
So that's one piece of this, I think.
So that's the first thing about this. What's the second? Because I'm not convinced that like I 100% agree with you, but I feel like I agree with you at least 80 to 90% of the way.
That's good enough.
All right,
see, you just proved my point. You went with the, just go with the wrong thing, Austin. So we're all on the same page.
No, you are the strong individual who had an opinion that he felt very strongly about, and he wasn't willing to change his mind about things. So, apparently I'm supposed to swing that direction.
I also think it hurts the growth of players. I think if you want to be a good player in this game, you shouldn't be someone who is looking to come to an agreement with the team. Rather, you should be someone who's looking to help the team find the best play. And those are not always the same thing. So I think sometimes this idea can hurt the growth mindset of players where they rather just like get along with the team and help the team come to a conclusion rather than be a driving force for what that conclusion is. And if you want to be a really strong, dominant player, you need to be a guy who's helping the team find what the conclusion is in any given circumstance and driving that force instead of just going with the flow. Because then you're like these guys, you can be successful in that way, but you're more dependent on who you latch onto and build a team with. Like, to me, those are the guys, like, they're usually 4 players, honestly, because not to throw 4s under the bus. But for a long time, you had these, like, super dominant 5 captains, right? The Puppy Kurokis of the world. And then they'd find these 4s that were, like, they're yes men to a degree. The guy who's going to, like, party with them, go with them.
His
Yapzor is, like, the example.
GH,
like,
right, okay.
And they're tremendous players. They can be shot callers. They can do everything. But generally, they're going to back the captain up and drive that conformity towards his ideas, right? And help him
Yeah.
achieve that. And they're just going to sit there and play their game and be the all-star forward player and whatever. And for a lot of time, that paradigm worked and it broke down over years. That's probably a longer discussion as to why. But so you can succeed doing that. But I think in the modern age, more than back then, you have to, if you want to rise to get a top tier spot on a top team or build your own, you need to be one of these other guys. You need to be a bus driver, not a bus rider. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay. But
you
you
can't
can't
be a
have
bus rider in modern age Dota, man.
you can't
There
have a
ain't no
team full
buses
of
to
bus
ride.
drivers though, right?
But it's not about, like, eventually you find a balance. But I'm talking about the guy who wants to break into competitive Dota right now.
Okay.
I think your chances are way higher at being a bus driver than being a bus rider. It's really hard to be a bus rider and break into competitive Dota.
Okay.
Really hard. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's really fucking hard. And I even argue that there's some players who kind of did that and then had to turn into the other to find the success they did.
Okay. Do you have any examples of somebody?
I think Soxa kind of fits that mold.
Okay.
I remember when I talked to Soxa way back and he was playing with Misery, he was more of like, I just kind of want to do my thing and I want a strong shot calling 4 so I can just play my quiet 5 and farm and be the playmaker, right?
Yeah.
And then when he wins TI, he becomes the voice on that team that people listen to in terms of how they should play the game, the map, team fights, right? Talk to any of those Tundra guys. He was the ultimate voice that decided what they went with in the end. That's a huge difference in terms of outlook in your role in a team, how you're playing the game, whatever. It's a leap of confidence. It's a leap of understanding. I think that to me is that's like the difference maker between getting a second or third and a first place for a lot of players. It adds up. Like, just because you are someone who can drive the conversation like that and reach the hard conclusion doesn't mean you're the guy who dominates every conversation and just decides everything, right?
Sure.
There's a difference between those two. And I'm saying you have to eventually get to the point where you're at that other end, I guess.
My understanding of the communications for many of the top teams is that usually there are at least 3 people, if not 4. I feel like there's always one guy who's like actually doesn't say that much. Every team has their like niche, basically.
Which is
but
fine.
like
It's
3
fine.
or 4 guys, maybe some guy takes up a lot of space. But whenever somebody does really feel something, when they see something about the game, they will say it and they will make that direction. And so in that case, it just seems like everybody has their own bus driver moment in any given game or any given series, right? Sometimes you're just not seeing that, right?
Yeah.
So I can see what you're saying about like how each individual needs to be pushing to find ways to direct the game and find the optimal play.
It doesn't have to be in-game either, just for the record. Like, it can be out of game. You can be a mute in-game player, but then in post-game discussions or in theory discussions, if you feel like something's wrong, you be like, no, we need to do this. And a lot of times people listen to that guy. Like, that can be the niche or like Sumail back in the day or whatever, right? Like, this guy says something, everybody listens because he rarely says anything, and usually it's right.
Was Sumail actually? I know Sumail was relatively quiet, but like, was he that person that he actually spoke up a lot more post game, like breaking down replays? Or,
I mean, he just had his different phases, right? Like, he was super young, quiet kid, and then he slowly became more talkative over the years, and which is generally what happens to people. But I do feel like he was very strong on, like, if he thought something was wrong and he spoke about it after the game, it's pretty hard to argue against him. Most of the time, because people felt like he was correct. His game understanding was just the best at the time. But he was just like, you could just tell he wasn't gonna sit there and think you were right just to agree with you.
Okay. Yeah.
And most of the really star players that I've been around have that kind of mentality. Whatever leads to it, hyper competitiveness or whatever, they will not agree with you just to move the discussion forward or to have like team camaraderie or whatever. They'll be like, we can end the discussion. I'm still going to think I'm right, but we can end it. Like, they'll give you that. That's the most they'll give you.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're going to die thinking that they were correct on this point. That's just how they are. So those guys are really valuable, but you have to bounce them out. So I think ultimately to weave this discussion back to Parker, when I see these kind of clashes between an individual and the rest of the team, I don't automatically assume either side is correct in these circumstances simply because one guy's against 4.
Okay.
That's my ultimate conclusion. I think that's a bad conclusion to draw.
Agreed.
It could easily be the opposite. It could easily be that nobody is incorrect. They just don't mesh. We've seen that a lot of times in the history of Dota, right? That said, to get to my second point, that guy is an absolute toxic, griefing motherfucker for sure. Like, why? Why are we even debating that part of this? That's not even a debate. The guy has "fuck you" on his knuckles. Like, it's not a debate. I will absolutely say this. I played in pubs with him for years. Everybody on the server hated this guy. He was incredibly toxic, shit talked all the time, griefed games out the ass, was a complete menace on the server for like 5 years.
Okay, yeah,
it's not a fucking debate. It's just what it is.
Let me be the YouTube comment. Let me be the Redditor. I know somebody's writing this right now. But Avery, you played on a team with Quinn. And Quinn had the same reputation.
Yeah. Quinn was also a toxic motherfucker. An absolute piece of shit in pubs and an absolute pub menace.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So
now, this does not...
Should you have kicked Quinn?
This does not mean you should kick the guy. So I'll say 2 things on this. The one is the bigger point, but the smaller point is, 1, I do not evaluate your character 100% based off this. I do evaluate it a little bit because I do think there is a reflection. Like, I think saying what I do in pubs is completely irrelevant to my character. No, that's not true. If you act like a piece of shit in a public community, you're a little bit of a piece of shit. And I think Quinn learned that. You can
still be a good teammate on a professional team.
Of course, you can still be a very functional pro player.
Right.
You know, Michael Jordan shit talked people, was a degenerate gambler, and like was a toxic motherfucker human for a lot of years, and he was a great teammate in a lot of capacities in terms of winning you championships and making the team function in ways, right?
Sure. So, I think some people would argue he was also good at like breaking teammates and their confidence, but
he viewed it as like he was going to increase his chances of winning by going down those paths, right? And a lot of these guys view it like that. And we can sit here and argue whether that's good or bad. I think most people would say it's not the best way to do it, but it does work in a lot of situations.
Sure.
Obviously, I don't condone it, but whatever. That's a philosophical debate. I just think if you look at people like Quinn was a great teammate. I never had a single issue with him as a teammate. And nobody who's ever played with him, I think, has, in terms of toxicity, behavior, whatever, as a person, in terms of the team environment, right? Just the pubs. And what I'm saying is the pubs do reflect on his character. I think it's a flaw in his character. I've talked to him and worked on it, and it does make him a little bit of a piece of shit. I'll tell it to his face. I don't have an issue doing it. He agrees with it. Like, these aren't separate, but it doesn't mean that you're a piece of shit within the team environment, which is why a lot of these guys play. That could be the case for Parker. He could be the biggest toxic pub piece of shit ever, but he could be great in a team environment. I don't know anything about him in a team environment. I suspect he is not as separated as Quinn was.
I mean, considering the fact that he got kicked from a team for toxicity, we have to assume those lines are not.
I feel he does not. It's not as contained. I think Quinn's a very situational case where he contained it probably better than anybody else. I assume everybody is worse than Quinn by default.
He was a better Dr. Jekyll. He had a better medication to keep Mr. Hyde down,
and not for healthy reasons. I'm just saying, like, whatever it was, that's how it was. Now, the biggest question here ultimately is, if you have someone like this, do you play with them because they're that beastly of a player and they're going to increase your chances to win because they're that good? Or do you kick them because you can't deal with the mental strain and toll and toxicity in the workplace environment and as a person? That is the ultimate question. I can tell you, Austin, is a question that I have come to at certain points with teammates, and it's a question I think every Dota player has come to, and it is a question that I think many teams that you look at who kick a single player debate for a long time before they kick that single player. Okay. Which is another reason why there's a long-running idea in Dota that you should never only kick one guy, because a lot of times when you only kick one guy from the team, it reflects a thought process that is flawed, in that you're putting too much on one person being the problem, and therefore replacing him will not work out.
Right. We would call that the evil geniuses theorem, right?
Yeah, basically. But it's happened a lot of times. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Liquid Matumba Man kind of worked out, right? They got another second at TI, but some could argue kind of made them a worse team in some ways. You have the EG kicking their offlaner perennially. You have all these instances where you kick one player and it's iffy. Game in with Diarachio is the most recent example.
Sure. I mean, let me put a big counter one, right? There's Tundra kicking Fada.
Yes, which if you remember, Seb tweeted.
This is gonna go down.
But that's why. That's part of why Seb tweeted that, is because it's like, even if you think this guy's all your problems, he's not. That had to be baked into it. I mean, the bigger part was like he was the captain and built that team, so it was really weird at the time. I don't think that's a bad tweet. I think if you had betting odds, it was more likely they failed than succeeded. It was hard to gauge who was actually driving shit. They also brought in snaking with all that, and that was a big gamble that paid off. Nobody really could have predicted that. So there's a lot that went into that one. But yeah, like generally, there's more wrong in the team than just one guy. And my conclusion, honestly, is that if the guy is not driving an unhealthy environment from a mental or physical health standpoint, you do not kick him.
Okay.
No matter how fucking toxic he is.
Right. And just to be clear, we don't know if he is doing that or isn't doing that.
Yeah,
you're just setting the parameters of like, yes, here's what I think is the situation.
We do not know what the situation with Parker is. Okay.
Right.
And there's a big difference between being kind of toxic and a bad communicator and hard to work with, and making people's lives unhealthy or mentally unhealthy. There's a big difference between those two. And they can bleed over into each other, and sometimes it can be hard to tell. But all I'm saying is, in the situations where you as a team want to kick a guy because you're like, I can't deal with this guy anymore. He's too fucking crazy. He's all over the place. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about half the time. That's not a good reason to kick a guy. You're probably going to have worse results if your goal is only results.
Okay. Does this apply to any teammate, or does this apply to incredibly individually talented person who is maybe one of the best in the world?
Well, if the guy's toxic and he sucks, and you're just gonna kick him, that's like, what kind of debate is that, dude? Of course he has to be one of the best.
Just like, Parker has clearly shown himself as being like literally, one of the best carries in the world, right? Yeah. And not everybody can claim to being one of the best X in the world, right? Not in the top 5, not even maybe in the top 10, right? There are plenty of middle of the road players who, still bring a lot of, what do they call them? The things that are outside of the game. There's a term for this. Anyway.
Intangibles? I don't know.
Yes, the intangibles. Thank you. Guys who, maybe are more middle of the road, but they bring certain intangibles that we don't know. Are you saying this is only does this apply to just the rock star?
Yeah, kind of. Because like, that guy is as good as he is because of the bad shit too. Like, that's the trade-off that you have to realize. So if you're kicking him because of the bad shit, then you should have never brought him on because of the good shit.
Okay.
Like, that's the risk you take with these superstar fucking best in the world players. No matter who it is, every one of them has had these things.
And to be clear, I'm fairly certain Heroic did know the risk they were taking with
100. That's what I'm saying. 100%. Like,
very well known.
You're gonna fucking clown yourselves. Like, well, you thought he was a nice little orphan child. Like, come on, man. This guy ain't Orphan Annie out here. Like, he has one of the biggest bad reputations ever. And I remember when he got picked up, my first thought was like, wow, that team's fucked, because he's just so toxic, and he has such a long toxic pub history. It's like, I just don't think he could succeed in a competitive team. That was my initial thought. Obviously he did. So then it's a question of, well, can you live with the guy? That's basically what it comes down to. Like, can you live with the guy? And if you can, then you fucking play with him, because I guarantee you your team's going to be worse, almost 100% trying to replace him. And if you can't live with the guy, then you can't, and you got to move on. And some teams reach that conclusion. A lot of times it's a trajectory. It's not like instant, right? You could bring this guy on, you win some tournaments, and then it gets worse and worse, and it takes its toll. I've been there too. And at some point you have to make a really hard decision. And it's not even like you want to kick the guy gameplay wise. It's just like, I can't fucking exist in a room with this person for another year. So you got to go. And I understand that. I've made that decision. So
Yeah.
that's a tough one. But the problem with those is like, when you kick the guy that you're going to be a worse team and you probably aren't going to get a good replacement. And the thing about Dota is when you have a team that wins, man, you probably aren't going to get one again. Like your odds of being on 2 championship caliber teams in your career are extremely low. There's almost no player who's done it.
Yeah.
And I'm talking
it's
about
usually
like,
the bus driver who can make that happen, right?
Yes,
Like 33.
of course.
Like
A puppy guy. But those guys are just rebuilding their own championship team over and over. To be on multiple year plus dynastic teams is almost impossible in Dota. So when you get on one, you better fucking make that last as long as you can. Like that's my philosophy. You make that motherfucker last as long as you can. Because the second you change out one guy, it's completely different team and you got to go from square one. And your chances of making that work are like, there's too many intangibles in Dota. You can't account for it. You don't know how many things some guy makes work just by sheer chaotic energy. Like you don't know, you know, like you have some guy, he doesn't show up to scrims all the time. He's late all the time, sleeps in. He's just the rock star, whatever persona, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sick of this fucker. You kick him. You bring in some guy who's like a workaholic, shows up every time to every minute. But is that actually better for you? Maybe the guy who didn't show up on time and was chaotic lightened the mood because he was the guy who just could eat shit because everybody shat on him because like he's always late and he's a rock star and he's skipping school, right? So everybody just beat on him and it was an energy outlet. And now you have no energy outlet because everyone's a teacher's pet. And so it's like, well, where's the hierarchy? Who do you should like? Some of these things, it upsets the balance on a lot of these intangibles and you don't know until you do it. Not everything is as clear to me. Back in the day, I used to think it was like black and white. Now I tend to err on the side of if something's working, you should accept that it works and not try and understand it because you likely can't. There's too many intangible factors. It's not black and white. Like a bad habit is not 100% bad for your team, as crazy as that sounds, I think. Again, unless it's on the health situation. If it's unhealthy, some guy is literally decreasing the physical or mental health of your team tangibly, you got to get rid of the dude. But that's like, those are extreme situations.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me you're saying that these interrelationship dynamics and the game itself is so complex that you can't actually, put the pieces together to build a championship team. You just gotta do this magic in a bottle and just hold on to it, sort of thing.
You can put the gameplay pieces together. I don't think you can predict enough to put the personable pieces together.
Okay.
Honestly. And I think anybody who thinks that is kind of fooling themselves. You can take a guess. You can feel like you're more likely than not likely to do it, especially with a lot of experience. If you're like you're some general manager who's been in a competitive scene for 50 years, you probably have a higher chance of doing that than some like random bozo. But
yeah,
I
guess I'm thinking about my mind is immediately going to traditional sports, and obviously there are similar relationship dynamics on teams and intangibles that people bring, and it is people's jobs to try and figure those things out. And I guess I wonder who what the expert on that, who that is, and what they would have to say, if they would agree with you, or does it just take somebody who's fully dedicated to that, solving that exact issue?
That guy will tell you that he knows what he's doing.
Sure. Because it's his job.
He gets, 100%. Or that at least he knows more to give them an edge, a competitive edge. That's all that really matters. And I think there is some truth in that. I think some people do have those innate skills to read how people are going to interact. But I still think it ultimately just comes down to I think most of the time teams that get along are the ones that just win. So if you have any mechanism that starts you winning, then you can that will line up everything else, Sure. If you bring in a toxic superstar, but he suddenly starts to make your team win, I guarantee you a natural hierarchy and relationship structure is going to develop as a result, because people are going to be like, oh, God damn, this guy's the best fucking carry player in the world. Like, holy shit, we have a chance, boys. And now they're going to believe in him. And now all of a sudden you have like a focal point that people believe in, that you can structure your gameplay around. You can structure your practice around. You can build confidence in. People suddenly have faith in the team. Like, that's not because this guy is some charismatic leader. It just could be because he came in and he won, and all of a sudden people think he's like the best player in the fucking world. Right? That's not I thought this guy was going to fix personal shit. It's just like winning fixes everything sometimes. Except when it doesn't, like. So if you have something, I'd rather get the guy who I think is going to help my team win than the guy who I think people are going to get along with.
Okay.
Maybe that's not what people want to hear, but I think that's the truth. Like, if you're trying to win, if you're trying to build a team of friends, okay, fucking do that. But like, most teams are desperate. Most teams who aren't the liquid / old LGDs of the world they're desperate out here. They want to fucking win at all costs, right? And nobody's position on the team is safe. You're not getting some Omega salary. So you take the risk, you take the chances to try and win, and you got to suck some shit up and like deal with some toxic personalities, because you ain't going to find fucking Fred Rogers who's 15k MMR. Like, that ain't happening, bro. Like, that guy is not playing Dota enough to be the 15k MMR best carry player in the world.
Fred Rogers
who's going to go out there,
video game addiction.
Yeah, he's not going to go in there and like have zero LAN experience and just be like, I'm better than fucking Nisha. This guy's a clown and he's trash. Like, and that's the guy you need to win that fucking series, right? So, you got to suck it up and you got to bounce it out, and you got to have some level-headed dudes on the team who can deal with the fucking maniacs. And maybe there's a lifespan on that, which usually there is. There's usually around a 1 to 2 year lifespan. And then at that point, even if you win, people are like, this guy is way too fucking hard to deal with. He's out. And then you go back to being trash, and then you'll eventually realize you got to find another toxic high MMR player to pull in, and then you're right back there, Okay. But then you experience losing again, so then you're like more motivated to deal with the bullshit. Like, that's the cycle, right? You become you take in the bullshit and you're hungry, so you deal with it. You win, you become a winner, and you're complacent and overpaid. I don't want to deal with the bullshit, so you kick the guy. Then you start losing again, and you're like, oh, this is fucking miserable. It's even worse than the first time because I know what winning's like. And this guy, he doesn't have bullshit, but it's kind of not as good. So you kick that guy. Then you bring in another toxic motherfucker, and you'll deal with his bullshit because you're like, I ain't gonna lose again, and you'll win. Then you become complacent, and you just go around in the circle. That's yeah. So Heroic's just on that circle, except theirs was really fast. Their circle's like a dot. They're going around it real quick. They brought in the toxic motherfucker. They were desperate. They put up with bullshit. They won, and now they're like.
I mean, the funny part about it is from what I've heard about K1 Hector is that maybe his older self wasn't the best, but like. New Hector is like very motivated, hardworking, and that they part ways. They pick up Parker, right? It's a shit show. Parker's out. Now they picked up Yuma, who I've talked to the guy. I've heard great things about him. Sounds like he's just a good, hardworking dude.
Yeah, well, you want me to take a guess here? You ain't gonna see Heroic in grand finals of LANs anytime soon. I'll tell you that. I don't want to say it because I like Yuma. I think he's a great player, but it's not about Yuma replacing Parker. It's about
Yuma. If you're listening to this, just the next time you're in the team room, just like trash somebody's desk.
No, it's not about that, dude. It's about the odds of you getting 5 players who win a LAN is just so small. What I'm saying is you can't know why that is. You just can't. And the second you change any of it, you're fucked. Like, they could have changed any player. They could have kept Parker and changed their 5 or their 4 or their coach or whatever.
Or Davai Lama, who obviously has a lot of attention on him because people have said he's very toxic as well.
I mean, that guy's insane. He's obviously an insane personality. So that's another situation of like, you can be like, let's kick Davai, but then maybe you lose everything after that too. I'm just saying, obviously something about the 5 of them work together. And the second you change that, you're kind of fucked and you're back to ground zero. And I don't think that team's floor was very high, to be honest. I think they had a very high ceiling, but their floor was very low. So they're going to sink pretty deep before they can get shit back together, if they do. And they still have some insane players to deal with, like Davai Lama, who's, his own problem. But I think this is basically the cycle that all these teams go through. And I think it's whenever you see the narrative whenever you see the public narrative on like, why doesn't this team kick this guy? He's so fucking trash or whatever. You run the same risk. Like if you're winning and there's a guy on your team that's eating all the shit, you don't want to kick him either. It's a fucking trap. It's a huge fucking trap because you're winning. You're fucking winning. So don't underestimate the intangibles that this guy brings to your team. You know, he's the fucking weehaw. He's the guy on your team who just eats shit and everybody hates him. And he's like, why hasn't this team kicked this guy? There's always one of them on every team. But if you're winning, you can't fucking do that. It's a trap, man. It's a fucking trap every time. Every goddamn time. And it's always one on every single team. It's insane to me. Like you can win TI and people will be like, they should kick this guy like a month later. You need to kick this fucker. He's fucking washed and dressed. Like they won TI like a month ago, dude. You know? Like what are you talking about?
Okay. Is there a third point to this? We had a first point and a second point. Do you have anything else on the Parker? You can just say no. It's fine if you say no.
Probably not. I guess the only part would be his part of this, which is since he's kicked now, he has two options, right? And usually the two paths that these kind of players go down are one, they say, wow, my team are dogs and I'm going to go find a better team. And he'll just go play on another team and probably do okay because he's really good, I guess, until that team finds him too toxic and kicks him or something. Or he will take the reformed, devout monastic path, which is where you self-reflect and go, wow, was I the problem? I know those are rare words to hear in the Dota scene. Was I actually the problem? And he will reform his behavior and change. And then in 2 years, you'll see him on another team, but he'll be a reformed gentleman. And that team probably won't win because he will have lost his
mojo,
spark and
his
edge,
ego that he needed to be able to dumpster kids. I'm going to assume that he's going down the first path, considering the fact that his response was there was not one part of it that was like, yeah, I fucked up. There wasn't even a, yeah, I fucked up, but like these guys also fucked up. It was just,
well,
these
how
guys
old is
fucked
he?
up.
Is he like 20 or is he 25?
He's in that area. I feel like he's been around the scene for a long time, but he's been born in 2002, so he's 22.
Yeah, so he's not going to reform yet. You got to be older to go the reform path. You got to be like in that 26 to 30 range, because then you start seeing, is this the end? Like, is this the end of my journey? You know, I got to change. I got to change to have a chance.
I can't go out like this.
I got to reform and come back, and you either make it or you become the like 30-year-old coach like Moonmander, right?
Yeah.
But if you're 22, fuck that guy ain't fucking reforming shit, dude. Ain't no way in hell. He is the bad boy on the block. He won some land. He thinks he's the best carry player in the world. He might be. He ain't gonna fucking change. He's gonna find a team that can put up with his shit. And there's probably one out there. I'll tell you, tell you that much. There's probably one looking right now.
All right. We have another bit of drama to talk about. I don't think there's really too much to say about this, but I know people will be asking about it, particularly since the people involved, both high profile, and I know there's a significant part of our audience who is interested in this. We had Ame, who was saying some not so nice things about another player in a pub. Ame and apparently Carl got into it. What we have been given so far is Ame basically calling him a monkey. I have no idea the depth of the words that he used or any racial terminology that comes along with it or anything like that. Sure, we'll find out more as time goes on. But the biggest reason that this is of note, I feel like a while ago, certainly when I started being a caster in Dota 2, nobody would have blinked an eye at this, and this would not be news at all. But obviously, this is particularly big deal because there was an incident long ago. Well, I guess a couple incidents. There was a skim incident, but more notably the Cuckoo incident, where there was a similar interaction where it was Cuckoo and a Chinese player, and he said, again, some not so nice things, racially charged. and he ended up getting banned from event. Now that was back when Valve actually had a hand in the scene. Now they're not, so I can almost guarantee there's no way they're stepping into this. So it's entirely up to third parties, and I don't think any third party is gonna step up and do anything about that, just because it's from their point of view, they probably feel like it is unnecessarily putting a target on themselves if they go out of their way and say, yeah, we're banning this person for this incident, unless it becomes such a big deal that they can't ignore it.
Yeah, it would have to be a massive public outcry for any third party to do anything other than maybe fine the guy or something. I could see people fine you, but they're not going to ban you from an event. It's way too much potential, like geopolitical risk or whatever you want to call it, of turning a lot of fans and viewers and other TOs and orgs into enemies for something that, if you don't do anything on, has no downside, basically.
Yeah.
Like, unless people boycott your event, because, again, it would have to be such a big public outcry.
I mean, in some way, it's in a really fucked up way, it is actually beneficial to the tournament to let them play, right? Because that just is going to bring a certain subsection of hate watchers. You're going to get some extra viewers, some extra viewing hours for your tournament.
Yeah, which is fucked up, but is what it is. Yeah, from what I saw of the remarks, they were clearly racist. And they were clearly directed in the same vein that there's been a lot of racism directed between the Chinese and Southeast Asian communities in the history of Dota, as there have been in many other communities. This is not the only one, but this is one that has a long history between the two. And he should be punished, I think. Will he? I don't know. To what severity? I don't know. It's kind of out our control, to be honest. Is there as much uproar about this as some of the others? No. I think that's been the case for some dudes, and I'm not sure exactly why. I think in the history of Dota, there's been certain players at certain times that have said things that have really become huge deals, and at other times it just seems like it gets swept under the rug. I'm not sure I can tell you the exact reasons for that. We can speculate, but it's just timing or the environment or the nature of what they said, right? How stark it is or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe that's all it. I find a couple things interesting. One is I wonder what would happen if somebody did any of these things in like League.
Oh, bam!
Like as
right
public. Like, can you imagine Faker just, just says some
that would be interesting,
crazy racist remark in a public game.
Yeah,
he's like the face of the game. He's face of esports.
Yeah.
He has 8 rings or whatever the fuck it is, and like 10 lanes. This guy just comes out and says some crazy racist shit in a pub. Like, what the fuck would the response be? It'd be
how
insane.
Much would Riot? Because Riot, obviously, any normal player banned instantly. Don't care. But like, would Riot?
That's what I'm saying, dude. Who the fuck knows what they would do? Like,
they try and salvage the situation because fuck it, it's fucking Faker. He's the face of our esports, man.
So that I always think like Dota is just still the Wild West. Like, you can just do and say whatever the fuck you want in Dota, and there's almost no punishment because Valve's hands off. And I think it's just how it's going to be.
You just got to make sure you don't piss off the townspeople enough that they come. You
can't be too racist. Like, I don't know who makes these rules. It's fucking bad, though. I will say. I wish it was different because I think people get away with a lot more than they should, and it's, I don't know. It's kind of sad that it's just allowed to go on for decades and decades. I will also say, what was I going to say? I had another point on this. Fuck. I forgot it.
Racism, Southeast Asia, China, Ame, Carl.
Oh, it's fucking gone, dude.
That's okay.
God damn it.
Maybe you'll recover it at some point.
Just edit out a 5-minute break, and then I'll have time to think of it.
No, we could save that for next episode, because there isn't too much else to talk about. It's just honestly just a bunch of drama. We did have a tournament that wrapped up. It was kind of a tier 2 tournament. It's 1-win series tournament where Liquid beat Spirit, but there was no Falcons involved, so any tournament that doesn't have Falcons involved, right? It's like, well, Lakia didn't have all the teams involved, but it did have Falcons, right? So it was like, it felt like the result, did matter more. I feel like,
Oh,
they're the default number one team. Yeah.
I brought it back. I brought it back.
Okay.
Final point of this episode that ties everything together.
Oh boy.
Okay. All of the Parker, the Ames, all of these into one point that I cannot believe is still as pervasive as it is in the Dota 2 community, which is this, Austin. I am continually surprised by how well most Dota players are perceived by the public in terms of their image compared to who they are as people.
Oh, yeah.
If I can tell you one thing as a fan of almost probably anything in life, not just Dota, do not idolize a person you do not know. You can idolize their feats and their accomplishments, right? Separate the art from the artist, but do not blind idolize people in terms of who they are as a person without further confirmation or evidence or whatever, right? And then you can lean towards it. And even then, have a little bit of doubt in your mind,
Sure.
Because you do not know these people. You see their accomplishments, you see their feats, you see in Dota, you see them winning lands and leading successful teams and doing all these things, and everybody says they're great and everybody loves them. Doesn't mean shit. You do not know them. Most people do not know them. And
yeah,
there's a lot of bad fucking dudes out there doing bad fucking shit, and they get away with it. And that's like most of life is what I'm saying. I'm not isolating that to Dota, but I'm just saying it's very dangerous, I think, in society in general to idolize people without knowing them as a person just because they have big accomplishments. Again, separate the accomplishments from the person and you're a lot safer off. And then you don't get sucked into these like cult black hole, wormhole, whatevers, where you feel like you have to defend a person because you want to defend their accomplishments. And in reality, you don't even know who this person is. And then when bad shit comes out, you have like surprise Pikachu face, like, well, how was he racist the whole time when he won so many lands? Like, those things they have no connection, right? Like,
it's those intangibles, Avery, that pushed him over the top,
Yeah, it might be. I'm not even saying that's not true. Like, there's a lot of dickheads who are these hyper competitive motherfuckers who have insane shit in their brain, and that drives them. Like, you don't fucking know what someone's motivations are. You don't. So, all I'm saying is don't idolize people in life. But in Dota, from what I know, really, do not idolize Dota players. I'm telling, it's just there are some good dudes out there, but
right,
it's not worth doing. I guarantee you, on average, it is not. Just celebrate the wins and whatever, and be a fan of a team, but like, don't vouch for these people as people if you don't know anything.
Yeah. Because as Avery said, you don't know them. You don't really get to hear from them very often.
Yeah.
You don't get too much time with them where they're on screen sharing their thoughts. But the people who are on screen all the time, sharing their thoughts, showing their personality, you do know a little bit about them, and you could maybe idolize them, right? Right, Avery?
No, don't idolize anybody ever for any reason.
Come on, not even the guys talking to you right now. No.
I mean, there is some truth in that. We're more out there than I think like a player is. Like, you at least learn a little bit more about someone's personality or how they behave with other people in a public environment, I guess. But even that's like pretty fucking flimsy. The only thing I'd say is at least there was like this talent thing where some of the really bad ones got weeded out, and there was large public outcry that vetted some of it, right?
Sure.
Like, I have more confidence now than maybe 5 years ago that most of the talent scene are genuinely good people nowadays, right? Because there was some vetting process. Like, that doesn't exist for players.
No.
There's no fucking vetting process for these dudes. If you're good at the game, you show up, some team's going to take you in, and then that's it.
Yeah, there's very few teams
your sins are absolved.
Are
like,
gonna, dig into what
you
kind
could
of
be a
person
serial
you are.
killer.
They care about what kind of player you are.
Yeah. You could be a Nazi. Like, nobody fucking knows, and then this guy wins a land and everyone's like, I love this guy. He's my favorite. It's just like, okay, yeah, I get it. You love the player and the win and the games, but don't vouch for his character, because we've been in the scene forever. Like, what do we know about Ame as a person?
Oh, I know
I
Well,
know nothing.
I've heard some things, but that is all.
Yeah, I've heard like 2 or 3 rumors, but I know fucking nothing about this guy.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. I could not tell you a single thing about this guy's person. He's been in the scene for 10 years as I have I. So yeah, I don't assume anything, good or bad. That's how I treat most people. But I don't know. I get a little frustrated, I guess, because I think Dota compared to a lot of bigger stuff feels very personal. That's why I bring this up, because like it feels like you have a very close personal connection with players or personalities or stuff, because it's kind of a grassroots scene, right? Like it was all
Yes,
built
I
up
would also
kind of
say
organically, I guess.
I think it largely stems from the fact that Dota is a pretty hardcore game, that we have branded ourselves as such. If you want the best game, don't care about the learning curve, don't care about how much fun you're fucking having. This is the best
Hmm.
game, right? I think it brings certain kind of people, certain kind of
Yeah,
personalities to it, right? And they make the game part of their personality, right? I am a Dota fan. That is part of who I am, right? I am a Dota person.
yeah,
I
and
don't
then you
play
have to
fucking
defend all of
League,
that,
right?
right?
And then in which case, yeah, everything that is related to Dota, you feel the need to defend
Yeah,
because it's
I
part
agree.
of who you are, right? I am a Dota person. So anything
Yeah, and
that's, you know,
it
bad about
represents
that
that
Dota is,
community,
yeah,
which I get. Like you want your community to be good, but part of that is calling people out when they're fucking dipshits and say racist things and like making that
yeah,
community better. You can't just scoff over it. And I agree with some people's takes that like the bigger player you are, the more you've won, the larger your personality, the more you can get away with in the public eye. That's just true in life. Celebrity lets you get away with shit. And so those are the guys that you have to call out the most,
yeah.
or at least
Fair
when
enough.
you learn more about him. And I think Ame fits in that category. Like this guy has a lot of history of saying racist shit in pubs, so he deserves to be called out. That's just the truth. It doesn't matter how much he's fucking won or like how much people like him as a player. He deserves to be called out even more, perhaps because of that, because he
Oh
can
yeah.
use that
I would
celebrity to
also
hide.
say, age is not an excuse for doing bad shit, but I think it is doubly appalling when somebody has been around in the scene for a long time and who is older, right? Combination of being around the scene, traveling, right, internationally, meeting all these people inland, in person, right? Like that should give you perspective. It should help erase some of those biases that you built up from just being a kid. And then
Yeah,
just age as well, right? Should temper you out in that regard. Ami's been around the scene forever and he's 27, right?
I mean,
It's
I'm not
like
gonna
you
judge
should
the
be
guy.
getting past this shit, but
Yeah, I'm not gonna judge him in terms of what his life's been like or where he's going or whatever. I think we have all had our low and high points in life. I don't think there's anybody who can say they haven't. And like you just have to learn from them and move on. And we all learn things at different points. Some of us learn shit at 20, others learn it at 30, others at 40. So like whatever, but you can't just glance over it because the guy's a big star, I guess.
yeah.
That is inherently bad. So ban him for life.
Okay. That's right. Avery has made a
Ban
stamp.
all of them. In
Ame,
fact,
Ame
ban
should.
every current Dota player for life. And then I can make a new team
Nice.
with wholesome people,
Okay. And
which
then
won't
you
even
can
include
have,
me.
and then everyone's going to be bad enough that you can just have chill dudes and still win because
Exactly.
everybody else is bad enough. That was the
Yeah.
early Dota scene, maybe.
Yeah, we'll find the like 5 chill Dota players in the world who exist.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for watching another episode of Not for Broadcasts. We will record again after Blast, but actually, one more thing, Avery. It is going to be Thanksgiving very soon, so it is for those non-American viewers right now. Thanksgiving, national holiday, and one of the traditional things you do about Thanksgiving is you say what you're thankful for. So, Avery, what are you thankful for?
Kez nerfs.
What? Kez nerfs.
Yeah, very thankful. Stupid
Okay.
hero. Stupid fucking broken piece of shit ruining pubs. Thankful for Kez nerfs.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm thankful that my Dota career worked out in a way that not necessarily that I won, but I got to meet some good people that had a positive influence on my life, and very thankful for that part of it, which is why I'm still here. So
I will echo that and say that I am thankful that I get to work with a lot of people that I think are really cool.
like Cinder, next week from Blast. Yeah,
looking forward to that.
It's gonna be really nice.
I don't know how
man.
our paths managed to push this together, but man, it's gonna be so fun working with.
I'm happy for both of you. Honestly, I think it's really healthy experience for both of you to work with somebody who's such a positive impact and influence on your lives, and I support it to all my degree. Me and Shannon will be casting in about 3 weeks.
And
I give my boy a call.
I look forward to that shit show of a cast. It's going to be one of the craziest, batshit insane casts, but it will be really fucking funny, I'm sure. Probably won't have anything to do with the Dota game, but you know. All right. Thank you for watching an episode of Not for Broadcast. And if you want to list what you're thankful for, let us know in the comments. Okay, goodbye.